Hi folks and welcome back. Now today I want to talk to you about Arms Against Tyranny, the new expansion DLC for Hearts of Iron 4, and in particular how it affects Norway. Now, as many of you know, I've been planning a Norwegian campaign, historical Norway campaign, to put up as a series on the channel, and I wanted to check out what changes this DLC brought. And I've got to say, I think the mechanics are really weird. I don't think it's been very well thought out. It's kind of buggy as well. And it's got problems. People tell me, because this expansion also affects Sweden, Finland, and Denmark in particular, that Sweden and Finland seem to play fine. There's some good stuff in here. For Norway, this is really janky. So as well as the usual stuff for sorting out industry and armament, Air Force, Navy, and Army, that sort of thing, you've also got, as we swing across here, several lines you can go down for the government, for the direction you want the country to go into. We've got a couple of obvious ones that I don't want to play as the communists and the fascists. I'm not really interested in playing those, certainly not in a historical playthrough. It's good that they're in there, don't get me wrong. So the issues I have are the lines that you might want to go down if you're trying to play in a more historical setting of Norway with a bit of alt history thrown in. We've got the historical Norwegian government, which I think is Nygaardsvold's government. I think that was the historical one. You can also have a vote of no confidence. This is an alternative democratic line where you basically get rid of him and replace them with it's a democratic party that knows war is coming and wants to prepare for war. That doesn't work as you would think, but we'll get onto that in a moment. And then there's also the option to go down here as the monarchy. You can restore King Haakon, is it? And become a monarchy. This one has... It kind of focuses more on the military, leaving the economy weak, but that doesn't quite work out how you would think either. And there's some really janky mechanics. So what we're going to do is we're going to quickly fast forward through a couple of years and unlock a few options in the focus tree for each line, and I'm going to show you how the political options tie in with those and how you play that line and why they don't work out like you would expect them to. So we're going to start with the vote of no confidence. We're going to replace Nygaardsvold's government, or Nygaardsvold's government. Sorry, folks, I actually have apparently Norwegian DNA. I did a test, but I don't have any idea how to pronounce the name, so I do apologize to any Norwegians watching. So we're going to go with the vote of no confidence. This replaces the government with one that is going to prepare for war. If you stick with this one, this is preparing your economy and has real penalties to the army. So this is the one that's supposed to prepare for war. We're going to go down that first. And what we have to work off, you start with this as Norway, you have crumbling fortifications, which reduces the coastal and land forts effectiveness. You have the hard 30s, which is coming off the Great Depression. Basically, that has huge penalties for construction and huge consumer goods factories cost as well. You have obsolete armed forces, which is a huge debuff. I mean, look at the debuff. Division speed minus 25%, organization minus 20%, attack minus 30%. That is massive. You need to get rid of that to stand any chance of competing in combat. And you have a complacent cabinet. Now, in each tree, there are things that help with those debuffs to get rid of them, but they do it in different ways. So let's start with the vote of no confidence. We're going to open this up, and we'll fast forward until we've got something to play with. Okay, so skip forward a few months. We've got Johan H. Andersen in as the new Prime Minister, or President, or whatever they are. And that has opened up, along with a few focuses in here, which we'll talk about in a moment, some political decisions that we can take using political power, and oddly, convoys. Yes, if you play this line in the focus tree, you're going to have to be spamming dockyards and producing nothing but convoys. I can kind of see where they're going with this. The idea is that you use Norway's great merchant marine, because I think they had quite a big merchant fleet, to bring in wealth and trade into the country, and that helps develop the country. But the way it actually works in game is once you've got this government in, you can spend 50 convoys and 70 political power to prepare a region for war by one state. You've got all the different regions. You can see them flashing up. Maybe see them a bit better if I do that on the map there. So at stage 1, for your 50 convoys and 70 power, you add a building slot and a civilian factory. And that increases the preparedness by 1. And you can spend preparedness later on to get benefits of reducing consumer goods factories and construction speed. So that's something that stocks up. All these different lines have different terminology and use things differently. Well, I say different terminology. I think there's actually a couple of typos in the focus tree, so it gets confusing. But stick with me, folks. Stick with me, because this is curious. So we can spend our... I mean, this is a lot of convoys, right? A lot of convoys. Now, there are things in the game, in the national focuses, which will give you some bonus ones. If I go and look at the Navy over here, we can expand the dockyard, which will help you build more convoys. And you can expand the Merchant Marine, which instantly gives you 150 convoy, which is useful for spending on stuff like that. There's another focus somewhere else. I can't find it just off the hand, but there is another one that will give you a ton of convoys all at once. So we're spending our political power. We do each zone in Norway by 1. But wait, there's more. And then we can go to the second stage of them. And for the second stage, for your 50 convoys and 70 political power, you will... Let's see what this does. This increases the local population by 250 and adds production of 5 aluminium. Norway is actually already quite good for aluminium. Doesn't have a lot of steel, which is kind of what you need for building convoys. So you're going to have to be trading some of the civilian factories you get given in this for more steel with probably your neighbours Sweden. They have quite a good stock. So then you can do every single zone. I'm not keeping count of how many there are here, actually, with another 50 convoys, and you'll get all this extra population. I'm not sure how that equates into manpower. That's something else. Norway's not great on manpower, but again, we'll talk about this later. And once you're done, you don't have to do them. You don't have to do all at level 1 and then all at level 2 before you go into level 3. You can just prepare a state all the way up to level 3 by spending this another 50 convoys and another 70 political power, and you get a building slot and a military factory. So if you absolutely save all your political power that you generate and don't put any ministers in here, maybe one, because there is one that increases your daily political power by 10%. He's in here somewhere. He's possibly, there he is. He's actually maybe useful for this, but then costs 150 to put him in, so it's a long time to pay off. So if you save all your political power and build every convoy that you can and nothing else, you can maybe get a civilian factory and a military factory in each of these areas. Possibly. But wait, there's more, because we need the convoys for something else, and that's called modernizing the armed forces. Do you remember this terrible buff here? Obsolete armed forces. This huge debuff I mentioned at the start of the video. Well, if you go into the focus tree, there's 2 problems with this. For one thing, if you go all the way down this line, you'll find a thing called Reform the Army. And one of the things it says, unlocks decision, modernize armed forces. Unlocks decision. So that unlocks something you can spend with political power. However, it doesn't. It's telling a lie, because that's not unlocked there. It's actually currently unlocked at the Rearm for Defense, which is down, it's under the same tree at least, but it's up much higher. I don't know which one it's supposed to be on. It makes more sense that it should be under Reform the Army. Maybe it's supposed to be under both. It triggers from this one. It's not on the tooltip. So I don't know what they're going to do with that. I don't know where they're going to put it. Maybe they're going to require both. Maybe they're going to move it and correct the tooltip. But anyway, currently it triggers there. What does it do? I hear you all ask. Well, this allows you to spend 100 convoys and 30 command power. You'll have plenty of command power, by the way. That bit'll be fine. But 100 convoys, and that, after 45 days, reduces that massive debuff by 10% on each one. So we have a debuff of 25% speed, 20% organization, and 30% attack. So yes, you very soon realize you need to trigger that 3 times to get rid of that obsolete armed forces debuff entirely. And I do want to point out that this is the tree for preparing the nation for war. And it is the hardest one to get rid of that, because I've done 2 test runs leading up to 1940 and the start of the war, and I could not build enough convoys or get enough political power to trigger that 3 times before we got attacked. And here's where one of the bugs comes in, because as soon as you go to war, that decision disappears. It's gone. Now, I think Paradox have acknowledged this is a bug and that it shouldn't, but currently it does. I have no idea when this is going to get fixed. So if you have not managed to clear that out, get rid of that debuff, by the time you go to war in 1940, which if you're in historical focus mode with the AI, you will, you're going to be stuck with this debuff throughout the rest of the game. And there's no way as far as I can see, to clear that off after the war started. Again, that's a bug, and I don't think it's supposed to work like that, but it currently does. So anyway, there is that. And I've not managed to clear it in time for the war because of the various costs that are required. Oh, this is why there's a bit of this is why it's hard to get rid of this. If you notice on the tooltip, it says Norway's total development has to be more than 15. And this took me a little while to figure out. What the hell is it referring to in its total development? I don't know. Some people on Reddit have said it refers to your industry tech level, how many industries you've got researched. And other people have said it's about the infrastructure level and about the number of factories you've got. I don't think it's any of them. I think it basically means you have to trigger these options 15 times, whether you do 5 lots all the way to level 3 or any whatever combination, as long as you've triggered 15 times. I think that's what it means. Now, these don't say they add development. These say they add preparedness. And this is where it gets a bit confusing with something later on. So I think that's how you build up 15 developments to be able to trigger that. So you have, what's 15 times 50? 7,500? No, that can't be right. 750? About 750. So you have to spend 750 convoys. Is that right? Is that 15 times 50? 10 times 50? Yeah, that's okay. That's right. 750 convoys before you can then start spending 300 more convoys on modernizing your armed forces. And that's to try and get... This is the branch of the government that's supposed to get you ready for war. If I was going to jump in doing historical... When I say historical, I don't mean I follow the country's historical decisions to the letter. I mean I set the AI focus to historical. So basically we get World War II kicking off, and we get to tailor the country to our needs to fight it, like we did with China. So this is the branch I would have gone down had we were going to be playing historical mode to try and get the country ready for war, because we know it's coming. We can use hindsight. That's fine. And it's the hardest. It's by far and away the hardest. So we're going to forget about that. I will show you a couple more things in here because these are all relevant as well. Down this tree, you've also, as Norway, whichever government you go with, you're going to have to deal with Mr. Quisling, who was a Nazi collaborator, I think. I'm a bit too fuzzy on the history. But basically, to deal with him, he starts a coup. If Germany invade, he starts a coup, a fascist coup, to try and take over. You can end up fighting a civil war. With this tree, he is actually very simple to deal with, because you'd be going down here anyway to try and get to this reform the army. Because it falsely says this is how you modernize the armed forces, right? So this is why I've ended up going down here twice. And you do it in sometime 1937. You arrest him, you throw him out the country, whatever. That's dealt with. That's easily dealt with. That's supposed to be a big thing. But with this tree, it's not. So that had to be mentioned. You'll notice a lot of these things, if you get to look at this yourself, a lot of Norway's features are only unlocked after they've been occupied and exiled. That's not necessarily great when we're trying to avoid that, but anyway. So trying to rearm for defense using the vote of no confidence and the alternative rearming for defense government is generally a no. So let's go and look at the next option. Oh, by the way, if you pick one of these things in the tree, which is mutually exclusive to the other branches disappear. So we're going to reload the game, and we're going to take a look at what would have happened if we'd picked I think, historical government of Norway. Let's have a look at that. Okay, so here we are with the original government we continued with, and we've unlocked a few things, and this is what it basically gives us to spend our political power on, but no convoy requirements this time. We don't need to build any convoys, or we can build convoys and use them for convoy things. This just requires political points, and what it does, again, we can develop each and every state in Norway, and at level 1 it gives us local manpower plus 10%. That's actually not bad, and we can build up a bit more manpower, something that Norway is lacking. It speeds up the production of civilian factories in that area, but reduces land forts and coastal forts. And at level 2, that would be more production or speed for civilian factories, railways, again slowing down forts and things like that. And at level 3, it's more of the same. However, you can see the buffs and penalties get quite ridiculous, actually. There's a lot to keep track of. However, what that does, and this is where we think there was a typo with the previous government line, because each one of these adds to Norway's total development. Each time you spend some 50 points on here, remember you can do each region 3 times. I've fully finished one on the list here. It's just to see what it did. And adds to development, which is what I think should have been mentioned for the political decisions we just looked at in the other line, okay? You remember I pointed that out. It was kind of weird. But now we know what this is. It doesn't give you any direct factories or anything like that. However, when you go to war, you can cash in these. This is like building up preparedness. So when you do actually go to war, you can cash in. If you've leveled something up to level 3, you'll be able to cash in militia units in there, which basically produces some free military units. They're not the strongest, but they are free military units. And then you can also cash in for, I think, a civilian factory and a military factory. It goes down the list, basically. So if you get all that done, you can then cash stuff in for bonuses when the war starts. And surprisingly, this is probably the better way to actually prepare for war than going down the preparing for war government. It does help. It leaves your construction free to build whatever you want as you're going around. You don't have to spam dockyards and convoys out at all. So I think that helps quite a bit. And if you look at the focus tree here, so remember those horrible buffs I said? We've got the obsolete armed forces, the crumbling fortifications, the hard 30s. This does add doing the broken gun, but this is easily fixed by things down here. This gets rid of that broken gun here, which there are penalties to military production early on. It's not great, I must admit, but you can get rid of it. You can fix the fortifications quite easily. You just need to get rid of the broken gun stuff first. That's reduced by, I think there's picking here. I think this is the last one, rearmed for defense. There's two other things which we've got that will get rid of the broken gun debuff. There's the ridiculous instance of, let's have a look again. So there's the obsolete armed forces. So once again, we've got this issue where if we look down the tree, we've got the thing that says reform the army, and that is the thing that's supposed to allow us to get rid of that obsolete army thing. It's not unlocked there. It's unlocked at rearm for defense, just as it was in the other tree. And you can see that because it's now given us these options. Now, this is where we still have to spend 100 convoys 3 times, and command power, which is easily come by, to get rid of that debuff. And that is so much easier to achieve here. It's absolutely so much easier to achieve because we don't need to build hundreds and hundreds of convoys to get Norway's development level up. We just need to spend a few hundred points of political power. And then we can get that up to 15, and then we can spam this 3 times. You start with over 300 convoys. There's more available through the focus tree if you want to go down there, if you need extra ones. It's done. And that's the most dangerous thing to Norway as a military power, that obsolete armed forces debuff. Because, like I say, that option goes if you haven't cleared it by the start of the war. I think they're going to change that. Who knows when and who knows how. So that's easily fixed. That's easily fixed. The hard 30s is quite easily fixed under this government. And actually, we've got a bonus there to defensive rearmament, which that counteracts to some extent the penalties we get from building forts for developing these areas. What this does do is allow us to create a load of civilian factories really quickly because we get huge production or construction speed bonuses to it. And then that will allow us to build whatever we want: radar stations, ports, airfields, anti-aircraft guns, and even fortresses as well to resist the invasion. So with this build, you've actually developed the military after the war starts. To some extent, you can do a bit beforehand, but it's easy to do. You get rid of the horrible debuffs very simply, and you don't have to waste all that industrial might building convoys. What this also has, and this is a weird thing about this, I don't think this is working as it should. If you go down this route, you will get the fascist invasion of Norway. This will trigger automatically should anyone declare war on Norway. And in historical focus AI, Germany will do that in 39 or 40. And then this automatically tries to trigger Quisling's coup, the traitor, the fascist traitor. However, you can easily postpone this for the grand sum of 50 political power points, and he doesn't start the coup. He puts it back by, I think it's 30 days or 50 days. And then what you can do is just go down here. In fact, it must be more than that, because when I tried this yesterday, this, by the way, doesn't open up until you've had war declared on you. So this is something to watch for. If you go down this route, you may end up in a civil war. Now, I just had to spend 50 political power, and that was put back. I don't know if that's the case if you don't have 50 political power spare at the time this might kick off. Say if I only had 35 because I've been spending it on the upgrades. I don't know if I can go into negative political power like you can with some of the other decisions. So we need to watch out for that. However, once it's been put back, you quickly go down here and arrest him, and that's it, done, dealt with, finished. So no civil war, no fascist uprising or takeover or coup. Done. Finito. So that's it. So this, to me, actually feels like a better tree to go down than the alternative government. Let's go and have a look at the monarchy one, because that's our next option. So here we go. We've spent on a couple of months, and we're heading down the tree to hopefully build up enough support for the monarchy to get King Haakon back in power. How do we do that? Again, it's over to the political decisions board, where this time, wait, you don't actually spend political power. You certainly don't spend convoys. To do this, to gain support for the monarchy, you sacrifice manpower. I don't really know where this is going, but it's going to cost you, I think, 9,000 manpower. There's 10 regions. You can do each one 3 times, and each time it costs 300 manpower. What do you get for that? Well, it looks like you get a penalty to factory constructions, but a bonus to fort constructions, a load of political power, and you get more support for the monarchy. And as you gain more support for the monarchy, you can then start to trigger these. Now, there are penalties going down here initially to lose stability, but don't worry, it'll all come back afterwards. And one thing you will definitely get is this one right here, which totally removes the obsolete armed forces thing. The entire thing in one go, and gain, yep, that says plus 10,000 manpower. So spending the manpower now in those decisions, you get it all back and more later. This gets rid of the complacent cabinet, and basically everyone is very happy after this. So what you would do, there's no reason not to do this. You mustn't recruit any armed forces before you've finished this, otherwise you won't have the manpower to do this. I should point out, by the way, that unless you go fascists or communists, you can't increase the conscription law until you go to war in this. So Norway is very poorly served for manpower. This tree, I think, probably helps a bit more with this. So all you do is you just spam the whole lot right away. Spam it, spend 9,000 manpower, well, 3,000 in this case, and in 30 days' time, you trigger it again. 30 days' time, you trigger it again, and all of a sudden, you will find that you have enormous support for the king. And that's it. It's done. You have the Kingdom of Norway. It looks fantastic. It's very nice. You've got rid of the debuff to the armed forces. You are ready to then start progressing and going to war. So if you think that burning manpower is the way to do it, then there is that. You won't have such a well-developed industry and economy. There is that. And you might have to deal with a civil war, because at the moment, you will get Quisling's coup, and that will start as soon as Germany declare war on you. And I can't see a way of arresting him in this tree. By the way, folks, can you see what's going on in here? This seems to be balked up somewhat. There are so many options in here. They've got options hiding behind other options, and it's not entirely obvious what's going on. So, by the way, that's not the way of getting rid of Quisling. That's assuming the coup has been successful. That's a whole other line of stuff that comes into play. So those are basically the 3 options I feel like for playing as Norway, and they're not great. Let's be honest. The mechanics are not great. I think it's ridiculous, the convoy spamming requirements for the getting the country prepared for war government. The hoops you have to jump through on the standard beginning government, and you very much feel like you're not preparing for war, but it actually does put you in a good position when war comes out. And you've got the monarchy route, which means burning all your manpower and not building any military until closer to the time of war. I don't really like any of them. I don't feel like they've been well thought out. And as far as I know, Sweden and Finland don't have any such ridiculous mechanics. If you are thinking of getting Arms Against Tyranny, especially if you are really wanting to play Norway, don't. Hold off. Wait till at least they've patched the focus tree so that the text reads correctly on the right flipping bits. And wait till they've maybe altered those mechanics, because I don't think they've gone down very well, and they may change them. So hold off on that. If you want it for the other nations, I haven't looked at Denmark at all, maybe it's worthwhile. definitely check out some of the vids. So for our Norway playthrough, I think we're actually not going to go down the monarchist route. I think we're going to stick with old Johan here, and we're going to be possibly ill-prepared for war, but then very quickly able to prepare for war due to the way that works. It sounds wrong. I did a test run. I've test run all 3 of these until the start of the war, when Norway gets involved. And this one felt like the better way to do it. Yeah, okay. We'll see how that works out anyway. So do join me for that. I'll be starting the playthrough tomorrow. We'll see how it goes. It's going to be interesting anyway. But let me know your thoughts on Arms Against Tyranny. I know some of these Paradox DLCs that come out for this game, they add things that are good and they add things that are bad. And sometimes they add things that you just don't want in there at all. Let me know what you feel about this one and whether you generally like the improvements or changes, or maybe you wish they just hadn't bothered. Maybe you think Norway was better before, and maybe it was. Who knows? I didn't actually get to play them until I bought this, but I wasn't expecting this at all. And yeah, it feels a bit strange. Anyway, we'll find out in the playthrough, so do join me for that.